What's going on, everybody? Today I wanted to take a look at FSR 3 in Immortals of Aveum. I wanted to do this video a little sooner, but I've been sick, so if I sound like a clarinet or something, that's probably why. But anyway, let's take a look at this. So I took a look at FSR 3 on Forspoken, and it didn't really feel right in there. For some reason it didn't feel smooth or like it was properly paced or synced, whether I used VSync on or off, right? I made a video about it, and I've seen other people essentially say the same thing, and they say the Immortals of Aveum is better. So I wanted to take a look at that, but instead of using just my 7900 XTX, I wanted to use my 6800 XT as well, because 6800 XT, or a card like the 6800 XT, would need something like Frame Generation even more, right? So let's take a look at that. We'll jump here on my save file here. Now what we'll do is we'll take a look at the settings first. So we're running at 1440p. Everything's native, no FSR. We'll turn VSync off for this. And graphics, everything's on Ultra. I want to take a look at something else too. I wanted to take a look at what the cost to performance is when enabling FSR 3 native anti-aliasing. Okay, so what that is it's not using FSR to upscale from a lower resolution to gain performance, but it's actually using FSR at the rendered resolution, so 1440p in this case, to improve the anti-aliasing. So right now we're getting 70 FPS here, just looking at this beautiful fountain here. And we'll go ahead and turn on FSR 3 native AA and see what the cost to performance is. Okay, there we go. Turn frame generation off. And we went from 71 to 63, 62, whatever. So it looks to be around 5 to 10% cost to performance for FSR native AA. So another thing that I've noticed with FSR in this game that I'm not a fan of is it tends to over sharpen the image, and I'm not a fan of over sharpened images. Like, you can actually look at this very clearly. Now I don't know if it'll come through in the video, but if you look at the thin lines and everything, like this gold trim decoration around the walls or the floor, you can see the grainy image. Sort of, it amplifies it. That's why I don't like over sharpened images, especially in a game like this. I feel it kind of detracts from the overall image, but maybe that's personal preference. So we'll get on with it now. We're gonna look at FSR 3. We'll begin with just native and pan the camera around the room in a steady motion, because that's a very good way to see how well the motion fluidity is, how well the frames are synced and paced, and this actually feels pretty good to me. Nice little pan around. You don't really feel those frame drops because right now we're running with FreeSync enabled and native, no FSR of any kind, and so that actually feels pretty good. I would totally play the game like this, no problem. I would have no issue with it. And we'll go ahead. Now we have to enable FSR. Unlike DLSS 3, which can be enabled independent of DLSS super resolution, it seems like FSR requires some form of FSR to be enabled, okay? So we can't really test it going from native, which we were getting pretty decent FPS, 55 to 60, that's pretty good. So now with enabling this native AFSR, we're introducing that sharpened image, but also taking a bit of hit to performance. But I would say this still feels pretty good. You know, there's a bit of flickering as you pan the camera around, you know, around the gold trim. Again, thin lines, that's the type of things that usually pop out. But I would say this still feels pretty good, okay? So now we'll go ahead and turn on frame generation. And for this, I know we have to enable VSync, so we're going to do that as well. Apply changes. There we are. So we're getting around 100 frames per second. Let's reset the averages. And yeah, this actually does feel like 100 FPS. So this is already feels better than Forspoken did. In Forspoken, I would have much rather just not use frame generation at all and just drop from native to quality FSR and just play the game that way if I wanted more frames, right? So yeah, I would say this actually feels smooth. It feels like the frames that we're seeing on the screen. Totally. I just wish that you could enable frame generation without having to use FSR. I think that would actually be pretty good because we're already getting 60 anyway, right? And then you just toggle frame gen. If you don't like the over sharpened image, that would work pretty well. Absolutely. So yeah, this definitely feels much better. It feels right. So I don't really see many visual issues. Not right here anyway. Like I said, the little bit of the flickering is increased maybe, but for the most part, it actually feels right. Yeah. Here's a good example of what I'm talking about with the over sharpening and FSR, right? So let's look at this image here. You can see the waterfalls in the back over there and all the names of the fallen soldiers in this hallway. And if we pan the camera around back and forth slowly, you can notice that there's some flicker on thin lines. Now that's not an FSR thing, it's this game. This game has these type of issues. I don't know if it's the geometry level or whatever they're doing for processing, but that's what it looks like, okay? Now, I will show you how the over sharpening will amplify all those, all the flickering there, and you'll see the over sharpened image as well. Let's go. We'll just go native. Won't even drop the resolution. Okay, so there we go. So you can see now the image, to me anyway, looks grainier. Now panning the camera amplifies the flickering on those edges. So it's stuff like that, and it's also the reason why I wish you could use frame generation independent of FSR. Just, you know, with DLSS 3, for example, you can toggle frame generation on by itself. And I have a feeling AMD will probably improve this. I mean, the thing just came out, right? So it'll take some time. But yeah, this is another example in this game that stood out to me. Actually, I haven't really tested it with DLSS to see how that looks, but this definitely increases the flickering. And then if you were to drop the resolution even more, so say FSR quality, that's going to become even worse, obviously, because now we're going off a lower resolution. So you can see all the flickering is amplified. So there's a lot of image breakup back there. And that's without any frame generation. Speaking of which, why don't we toggle it on and see what happens? For that, we'll have to go with VSync and frame generation. Okay. And why don't we try native first? Alright. Let's see what we're getting for frames. 84, 85. So I don't think this is going to be smooth. Actually, it's not bad. You do get like some inconsistencies when you pan the camera, and that's not really the fault of frame generation, it's just the base FPS that's dropping. But you can see like quite a bit of breakup over there. I don't know how it's coming through in the video because, you know, we're above 60 and it's being recorded at 60. But let's look at those lines with frame generation disabled and see if that changes at all. Okay. Yeah, they're still there. They're still there. So that's kind of interesting. Let's try disabling FSR completely and go to native. Oh yeah, I mean the flicker is pretty much gone. Wow, that is very noticeable. That is very interesting. I didn't think it would be that much of a difference. Wow. I really want to test DLSS now on this and see how that looks. See if it looks any better. I haven't really played this game much. But let's go back with FSR native AA. Yeah. It's definitely a lot more flickering and breakup. Yeah, that doesn't really look good. Interesting. Okay, we'll take a look at this room now with FSR quality. We're getting around 80 FPS and panning the camera around. Let's see, we got a couple little stutters there, but that's gone now. Yeah, this feels pretty smooth. I would say, yeah, this feels fine. This feels good. Running around, a bit of running around here. Yeah, it feels nice. The frames are nice and synced. It looks pretty fluid in my display. Okay. Now let's try enabling frame generation, and we have a 60 plus base frame, so that should make for a pretty good frame generation experience here. Let's go ahead and try that, and for that we're gonna turn on VSync now. Okay, and here we go. 100 frames, and yeah, it actually feels like 100 frames. Very good. Running around, yeah, it feels nice. It does. I mean, I'm not very sensitive to low latency because that was one of the things people kept dunking on frame generation for. You know, all the latency this and latency that. For me, when I tried it, I don't play any multiplayer games, so maybe that's why. The latency felt fine. Like this here feels fine to me. I would have no problems playing the game like this at all. Visually, I think Frame Generation FSR 3 is pretty good. I mean, it does amplify some of the imperfections a little bit, but you also have FSR added on top of it as well. So, you know, there's a lot of things, but I would say it looks pretty good. It's definitely a good start for AMD's FSR 3. And you know, I'm not using any top-of-the-line GPUs here either. We're just using a 6800 XT. You know, which is a pretty good GPU, one of my favorites from AMD. And I would say this feels and plays very good. Absolutely. On to my conclusion then. Immortals of Aveum is the better example for the quality of FSR 3 frame generation. As someone that has quite a bit of experience with DLSS 3 frame generation, AMD's version is very comparable from an image quality perspective from what I'm seeing here in Immortals of Aveum. Not so much in Forspoken though. It also works in different generations of GPU and brands, which is a very good thing, obviously. Where it falls behind is the fact that it doesn't work with VRR and the fact you have to enable FSR Super Resolution to be able to use it. The FSR implementation, for example, in this game isn't the best. It over sharpens the image and it also increases flicker and image instability as I shown. Even though that exists in its native form, Super Resolution will amplify it and make it worse, and that will also reflect on the quality of the generated frames, obviously, and even amplify it a little. So it's a good start though. This tech just came out from AMD and I'm sure they're going to improve it and with the feedback of the community. But if they fix the VRR issue, that's my biggest complaint about it. And having the ability to independently turn FSR 3 frame generation on without having to turn on FSR Super Resolution, that will be great. That's my conclusion though, and I hope you liked my video. If you did, give it a like, and if you have any comments or suggestions, leave them below, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching.